Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to unlock creative thinking using AI-powered knowledge graphs. I will use an example from Substack of an article that I like by Michael Garfield here, and what we will do is that we will visualize it as a knowledge graph using the Nodus extension here. This graph shows me an overview of the main topics inside this very nice article, so I can quickly visually understand what are the main ideas inside, how they relate to one another, and most importantly I can identify the gaps in this article and then based on those gaps, generate questions that will bridge these gaps in interesting ways and allow me to think about the content of this article in an active way, where I engage with the material and where I use the AI as a co-pilot for thinking, where it comes up with the questions I could then think of the answers to, or that I could send to AI and then have a conversation where it generates interesting questions for me and highlights some aspects of this material that are quite interesting. And another very good feature of using the graphs is that you can zoom in onto the different topics that you identify here. So for instance here, if I'm interested in, let's say, mind abilities, I can click on that topic, zoom in, and even see in which context it's used. So what are the different statements from that text where it's related more to the topic of mind abilities. I can also summarize this topic, so I can kind of see what are the main ideas inside this text on mind abilities as well, just using the AI. And that helps me zoom in into the different ideas and read the text in a non-linear way, where I focus on the aspects that I find interesting, that are relevant to me, and then explore them in more detail using this really nice visual interface. So I'm going to demonstrate how all of this works and how I develop new ideas this way for my own research. Okay, so here you have a Substack article, and when you load this article, you can then load the Nodus extension for browsers. We have it available also for free for the first trial use, so you can download it, install it, and simply start using it without an Nodus account. And once you click on activating the extension, what you will see is this graph. And let me explain in a little bit how this graph works. So underneath, it represents this text as a network, where the concepts or the lemmas inside this text are the nodes, and the co-occurrences are the connections between them. We have a peer-reviewed research paper that I will link to above, where we explain how this works in detail, but basically based on this graph representation of text, you can quickly build a network and then apply different network metrics to see which concepts are more influential because they connect different topics together. What are the main topics inside? They're indicated with the different colors here. And then when you click on this topical view, you have a high-level simplified overview of the main clusters of ideas which are present within. And so that gives you a really interesting entrance point into this material, because of course I like to read text chronologically, but I also like to see what are the parts of the text that are talking about the stuff that I'm interested in. So for instance, I can go here on enlightened thinking and then click on that topic and then see in which context it appears. So I can see the statements from the text where the author is talking about everything that relates to enlightened thinking, or I can also click on AI summary, and then Nodus will generate a summary of the parts of the text that are talking about enlightened thinking, so that I get like a very quick idea of what this topic is about. By the way, when you're in this topical mode, you can also deselect the topics and just click on summary, and then it's going to use something that's usually called graph rag summarization, where it identifies all these different topics and then generates a summary for each of those topics. So you have like a more detailed understanding of what those topics are about. So it's like an advanced way of generating a summary, because the summary is going to be quite generic and simplified, but the summary that is generated based on the different topics, it's going to explain what each topic is about. For example, here you see I have a life machines topic, and then it explains to me what this topic is about. And then I have a topic on evolving identity, so I can read more about that. False categories. So for example, this I might like because it's talking about how categorization is maybe not something that should be rigid, but it's more like a model that we can use in order to think about something from a certain perspective and then move on to the mind abilities and so on. So you see, it gives me these entrance points that allow me to understand what the text is about, what I should be primed for, and then I will approach this text in a much more conscious way, because I will be able to focus on the stuff that I find interesting and also on some new stuff that I discover exists just in this text. So this is a really good approach, where you use the graph to sort of disassemble the text into the different parts and relationships it consists of, and then zoom in onto the different topics to explore what they're about in more detail. And as you can see, Nodus also shows how the topics are connected and what are the stronger connections. So for example, I see there's a very strong connection between evolving identity and life machine. So that would be kind of like the main ideas inside here, and also false categories. But for example, enlightened thinking or questioning evolution are not so present. So that means that also if I want to develop some ideas in this text, if I was the writer, for instance, I could focus on these two topics here. I can select them and then generate an interesting question that will propel me to think further in this direction. And usually you come up with very interesting ideas because you can just read this question and then try to answer it yourself. And that makes you engage with this material in a much more interesting way, because you're connecting ideas that are not yet connected inside. But you can also send it to the chat inside Nodus. You can also clear the previous history here and just send this question to start from scratch. And then it's going to use the context of this text to generate some interesting ideas for you based on this question and based on the material of this text with the references. So it's like a very nice way to engage with the text, because instead of just using a standard extension like you have in Arc browser, for instance, where you just talk to this content, here you can actually focus what you should be talking to inside this particular text. So that's very good for longer texts, and that's where you would use AI anyway, right? Like you would focus on specific ideas that you find interesting, maybe a few of them that are not connected. This is what I recommend also to make it think more creatively. And then you generate ideas based on those gaps and peripheral topics. And another thing that you can also do is to go into this more granular conceptual view and also focus on some concepts that are on the periphery of the graph, because that means that they're not so well represented. You can actually make Nodus show you all the different words and see that, for instance, here, there's this whole cluster, the orange one. We see there is a node here on thinking and then also intelligence. So these are the two smaller concepts, and then we can use these to generate an interesting research question on a much more granular level, where we focus not on the topics but on the concepts themselves. So you can really zoom in or zoom out as much as you want, but to generate interesting and creative ideas, I always recommend to focus on the periphery of the graph, on the topics that are smaller, on the concepts that are not so well connected, so that you bridge the existing gaps with your ideas using the graph. So this is how it works. You can try it out on any text. Also in the main version of Nodus, you can upload it to your own graph and then use the desktop version to analyze your own text, for example. Or you can also use the same approach inside the MCP server, inside your favorite LLM, where you can connect to the Nodus MCP. I will link to the description of how you can do that above, and in the description to the video as well. And then you can ask Claude to use Nodus to generate interesting research gaps for you. So you can use it both with the graph, or you can also use it inside your favorite LLM. So please let me know if you find this workflow useful, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments to the video below, and I will answer each one of them. Thank you.